So this hangout is now live, apparently. So we are here with Miguel. And Miguel is the new coach at Revive Stronger. And I have to, first of all, figure out a way of how I share this link so people can join this live session. I don't know if you guys know, actually.
No idea.
I have a link to invite people to join the live, like our live chat, but that wouldn't be very good. We'd just get a load of people with their video cams and coming in. It's live over on YouTube anyway, so actually on our channel this will be public streaming. So
then you can share the YouTube link in the group or not?
Cool. I'll share that now. You two can talk amongst yourselves.
Do we have actually some good questions? I know.
We don't have that many questions. But I was hoping, first of all, just to give the guys a bit of a background story of how this all came to be. So I don't know if Miguel wants to first kind of talk why he ended up approaching us. And then we can talk about kind of where we hope things will go and things like this. And I'd love actually to hear about Miguel's current situation in terms of education, coaching, everything you're doing, kind of the work with Cliff Wilson, like projects you've got going, and then where you want to go in future as well. So in terms of like your aspirations to be like the next Eric Helms or things like this, I'd love to hear about that, or like awesome. Even competing. If you were ever going to compete in a physique show or bodybuilding, that would be amazing.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely have aspirations like that. The only thing is that the clip thing we're not announcing quite yet. So that's the only thing that. Oh, wait, are people going to be able to see this or?
No, we're just not anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, this is public. So we just say I don't know what to say on that part.
No.
We just won't talk about it anymore. So yeah, go on like what your education is like, what you're going through right now. You've recently just finished some important exams. You're currently studying towards, and you eventually want to get a PhD.
Cool. Yeah. So right now I am studying nutritional biochemistry at McGill University. So that's kind of a degree that it doesn't quite teach everything, and it's different than a dietetics degree. As in a dietetics degree, you learn and you get the legal permission to give meal plans and stuff like that to populations who really need a meal plan. People who are like obese, diabetics, people who are going through cancer. And the problem with that, and why I didn't want to go into an actual dietetics degree, is that you're kind of bound by what the government tells you to do. You're bound by giving people 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass, or like 25% grams of carbs. Like you're bound to all these things that the government has established that this is the way that it works. And it takes forever to change these things, and you have to give recommendations that you know are pretty much wrong. Versus with nutritional biochemistry, I got to learn really the biochemistry of how things work, really learn everything down to like the hormones, the molecule, the chemical processes that happen in the body, so that I can make my own recommendations, and I am not bound to give people recommendations that the government tells me to give. So that has been awesome. I've done 3 years of that, and I'm in my last year. And now that I have that I have studied this, I have had most of my nutritional questions answered. I think that we have covered a lot of the research that has been done in nutrition allows us to kind of maximize most of what we can out of nutrition, or at least in my perspective. We have so much stuff on protein timing, meal frequency, what macros are going to give us which goals. However, I have a lot of training questions that I have answered. So I have chosen to now do my master's and my PhD in the field of exercise science. And in terms of specifically which questions I would like answered when I do my research for my master's, for my PhD, I have a few. I have 3 that I would really like to look into. One of them is I really want to look into the role of muscle damage, and I want to know if that is actually conducive towards muscle hypertrophy. We have some blood flow restriction studies, some other studies that they're starting to show that it might not be quite as important as we think it is. I would also like to do some work on knowing. This is just something I was thinking of, on knowing which rep range is sort of or which RM is best, is the best indicator that you actually grew. I think that's something that would be really, really cool, is to know, okay, well, I tested my my 6 RM, and that is the best indicator that that I really developed muscle size, or my 8 RM or 10 RM or something like that. And then finally, I would really, really like to look into the role of undulating periodization, and if that is actually something that we can look at for hypertrophy. I mean, most of the research that we have done has been done on strength athletes, and I think that it'd be really cool to do a full dedicated study to hypertrophy. So that is kind of my academic interest, if you guys want to comment on that.
No, yeah, it's really cool. And I know some of the things you're talking about, there's kind of studies that are going on in that area already. Obviously,
Yeah,
like we all know, like one study is not enough to prove anything. So the fact that you want to go into this as well is exciting. I definitely think, I mean, all of the viewers and myself included want to know more about muscular hypertrophy and what kind of indicators we can do to measure that, because at the moment there is nothing like training wise. There's so many kind of variables that go into it that could impact what you're measuring, and that it can be quite hard sometimes, and you kind of almost have to trust the process along the way. So it's nice if there was like a really evidence-based approach to kind of testing and monitoring that. So no, that's really exciting.
yeah, I think it would be really, really cool to well, we have all these tools under a tool bus that we use, like how your 1RM is going, measurements, pictures, stuff like that. But it would just be really cool to be the one that establishes a new tool that people use. You know, I almost envision it like, bro, what's your 8 RM? Like, I heard that's the best way to know if you're growing or not.
Sorry, my microphone was on mute.
Oh.
I'm trying to coordinate the Facebook group having the questions there, and then we've now got it on. I've got our live chat open, but I've muted it so it doesn't burst out of noise. We have Daniel Root and Ratchet Beer who have commented, and they just say hi. So if any people do have questions, then they can ask in the live chat, because I now have that open, so I can see Ethan Sinclair has now commented saying hi. So that's cool. And then I don't know if Pascal wants to comment on any of the academic background, but if not, you can go on to kind of talk about what your kind of physique aspirations are, whether it's like strength, bodybuilding, like physique.
Sure. No, I have nothing.
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of physique, right now my goal is just to develop more muscle mass. I mean, I know that I'm pretty young, and I would like to just grow for a few more years before I decide to really, really cash in. I know that right now, if I were to compete, it wouldn't be really for anything other than my own ego. For the listeners, I'm 22 years old, so I probably want to grow at least until the time I'm at least 25, 26, so that I can really, really bring to stage what I want to bring to stage. And also right now, if I'm going to be doing my master's, my PhD, I really can't afford to have that end stage brain fog. I really don't know how that would impact my academics, and I don't want to find out.
No, I can completely respect that. It's I always, whenever you're probably the same, both of you guys, but when I have clients and not clients, if I have a consultation with a prospective client and they're talking about wanting to compete in things, a question, and normally most of them who apply have actually already thought about it, is how is their stress going to be for that year, and whether they're a student or whatever they're doing, maybe they're moving house, getting married, like have they actually just got a stress-free period? Unfortunately, most of the time they do, but if they didn't, like if you're doing a PhD, you're not going to be competing that year, because that's going to take all your mental energy. And
I find that a lot of people, they don't, it's hard to realize just how much it takes out of you, because, well, I did a full contest prep, and then due to some, like, I tried to compete overseas, because my family moved that year, and then due to some paperwork, I wasn't actually able to go through with it. But I just remember that feeling because I personally didn't know what it would take or what it would do to me because it was the first time, and then I went through it, and I was like, holy shit! Like I can never do this while attempting to do something big again. Like when I compete, it's going to be like either when I have a break between my studies or after my PhD, and I really have time to just kind of die mentally.
Yeah, I think I really take my hat off to people who do this whilst working like a 9 till 5, and normally they're not 9 till 5 jobs, they're longer, like overtime as well. And I've always been in a fortunate position where the first time I competed, I was a personal trainer, so I was very much in control of my time, and I was living at home, so it wasn't like I had to go out of my way to try and make a strong living. It was kind of like I was transitioning into the online side, and if clients didn't turn up, then it was kind of like, yes, which it shouldn't be, but it was at the time, and I didn't really go about my contest prep in the way I'd like to now. And then the second time, obviously, like it's online stuff, and it's much more manageable when you're working for yourself and on the internet. If you've got in-person clients, or you have to go to meetings, board meetings, or something along those lines, you can't be a grumpy asshole, even if you want to be. So it can be difficult. We have had a live question come through from Ethan Sinclair. So I don't know if you want to go for it, Miguel, if I ask that question.
Sure, go ahead.
So Ethan has asked, what are the best ways to measure hypertrophic progression? So this is obviously something you want to study, but I guess you could answer, what are the ways you might measure it now when we haven't got anything that's like solid?
Sure. So one of the things that I like to do, if someone if I'm working with someone for a long period of time, is I like to have an exercise that we use within a specific rep range throughout time, and we keep that exercise constant. Let's say, for example, we want to measure your back hypertrophy. Then what we can do is when you start working with me, we are going to do like an AMRAP set with a bent over row with a specific weight. And every few mesocycles, we are going to implement the bent over row again. And when we have introduced the bent over row again, maybe we run two mesocycles with a bent over row every few months. When we go back to it, we make sure that we maximize the neuromuscular adaptations that it takes for you to really get back to doing it as efficiently as possible. And then after a mesocycle or so, we are going to do an AMRAP set again. So if we do it, let's say at the first month, then after 4 months, and after 6 months, and you are constantly increasing the weight or the amount of reps across time in that same movement, you're keeping everything the same, then we know that your back is probably growing. Another way that most coaches often use, and you're probably familiar with this, is just measurements, pictures, and then just overall progression in the other lifts. But I really like that approach of having one constant exercise in there that you keep using over time and refer back to really get a long-term picture.
Yeah, I think that just re-emphasizes the importance of logbooking or keeping a logbook, just actually monitoring your training. I know when I used to first go in the gym, like, and even now I'd see like fairly big guys. I'm like, so what maybe you're working with them, you're like, what weight are you going to use? And they're like, I don't know, like maybe 100 kilos. I'm kind of feeling that. I'm like, what did you do last time? No fucking idea. It's like, oh, well, you don't have a clue whether you're progressing or you're just going in there and just chucking load on the bar. So no, I like that. I like having I just like log booking. I just think you can track PRs. I think that's a fantastic way. I don't know if there's anything you'd add to that, Pascal.
No, actually not. But we have actually received a lot of questions over.
Oh, you can see too.
Yeah, totally. I'm all on board. So when you're ready, Miguel, I would like you to ask the next question, which is all about muscle protein synthesis.
Oh, awesome.
How much?
Where are you guys seeing these questions? Sorry, Pascal.
Yeah, so you have to actually click the link which you posted in our Facebook group that takes you to the live session on YouTube, and then you can see it for yourself.
Oh, gotcha.
But okay. you have to mute the video because otherwise it is really confusing.
Oh gosh, yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, cool.
Are you ready, or for the next question?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Daniel Root.
Hit me.
Man, all the cool names here. How much of a benefit, as a rough percentage, do you receive by timing your protein intake according to the refractory period that occurs after MPS is elevated?
I wouldn't say it's very large. I would mostly attribute it to how much protein you are getting per meal. Let's say, for example, you are getting in 180 grams of protein per day, and you decide you're going to split that in between 9 meals or 8 meals, and you aren't getting enough protein per meal in order to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. Then I think that there might be there might be an issue, and we have seen that in a study that compared multiple protein feedings to, I think it was 8 protein feedings with 10 grams of protein per meal, and they found that the 10 grams of protein per meal wasn't enough to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So if you're really taking it to an extreme and only getting a few grams of protein per meal, then you might be looking at quite a detriment. However, if you are splitting, let's say, those 20 to 40 grams of a high quality protein source in between meals, and the meals are, let's say, 2 hours apart, I don't think that you're going to miss out on much. Maybe like below like a 5% difference, and I'm just throwing that number out there. I think it's important for the listeners to know that although we know there is a refractory period, it's still something that we don't know too much about. We don't know if it's actually going to cause you to lose out on many gains. And really, we haven't studied how like 40 grams of protein spread 2 hours or 1 hour apart is going to affect an individual, and whether or not that is going to be better or worse than spreading it between 3 to 5 hours apart. All we know is we know that we know the extremes. We know that spreading your protein feedings into 3 to 4 meals about 3 to 5 hours apart is better than having 8 meals with just like 10 to 15 grams of protein each, and is also better than having 1 meal per day with all your protein. So we know that kind of the middle ground is better than the extremes, but we don't know sort of those intermediates and how they affect you.
For me, it was really important that you actually mentioned that when it comes to the refractory period, that it's quite uncertain yet what role it plays, if it really takes that much place. I just recently also heard a podcast where Johan Trommelen was talking about that it simply needs more research in that area to actually get a clear idea about that. And also always keep in mind the realistic approach to things. I mean, yes, you can take it to the extreme levels where you're then always sipping on, I don't know, back in the days, BCAAs, right? Every 10 minutes or something. But who really does it on a day-to-day basis? A sustainable, realistic approach. Who's eating like 10 meals where the total amount of protein is less than 20 grams or something, like high quality protein? I don't think that there are many who actually take it to that extreme level. And that's why I also think that when it comes to a realistic approach, the differences between eating like 3 meals versus 5 or 6 meals of protein feedings, I think it will probably be really, really marginal. And if you then can detect it in an individual, I'm not even sure if you can measure that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, if it is shown at one point, I imagine that it's going to be by some biochemical markers that really won't translate to that big of a difference when it comes to actual measurable hypertrophy. But yeah, it's something that we just need more research on, and we can't really comment on for sure. Theoretically, there might be something there, but we don't know how it actually plays out. And it's also important to note that at the end of the day, what you're worried about is how is this going to actually affect your physique, not how this is going to affect some biochemical markers that I find are cool, but you have no application for.
No, totally. Steve, do you want to add something to that, or?
No, the only thing I completely agree with you guys, and the only thing I'd add is I'd hate for people to kind of get so obsessive with this sort of thing. I've definitely heard it where people will be like, "Oh, it's been 2 hours since my meal. I can't now eat more protein because I'll just mess up everything." It's like, no, you still can benefit like that. We don't know enough that that's actually like going to make or break your progress. Or like some people might have an intra workout and they get very worried that having a small amount of protein in there is just completely like not useful or even detrimental. They need to like maximize MPS during that workout. And I think the reason I would use an intra workout protein wouldn't be to try and like maximize an MPS response. No, yeah, I don't really have anything else to add.
Yeah, and what I will say is that it seems that one of the reasons that MPS gets shut down is simply because it's such an energy expensive process, and as ATP goes down, and we start to see more AMP, more cyclic AMP, things like that. mTOR, which is a master regulator of protein synthesis, gets shut down. So it seems that one of the ways to keep it prolonged is to simply provide the body with more energy. And there was some studies to show that you can keep protein synthesis going by having just carbs. I think it was like 50 grams of carbs in the study, or by having branched chain amino acids, because those are converted to glucose, and that might be able to keep protein synthesis going. So there might actually be something there to just providing more fuel intra workout that is going to allow that protein synthesis to keep going just by providing more energy, but it might have nothing to do with a refractory response or just by simply having a higher frequency of meal approach.
Awesome, love it. Shall I ask the next question?
Yes, please, Steve. Go ahead.
So
it's your turn again.
We have thought process. I'm pretty sure thought process is also in our Facebook group. So thank you for the question, and thank you for being part of that community. So volume for side delts, they just don't grow. I'm training them 3 times a week, 6 sessions, 6 sets each session. So how would you kind of approach that, Miguel?
So three sessions, 6 sets per session?
Yeah.
So I say that is kind of like an intermediate amount of volume that is neither like extreme nor low. I would try approaching it with a low volume for a mesocycle and see how that works, and then also try like a very high volume approach, perhaps 20 to 25 sets. Try those out, because again, we report the means. Like we say that most people need between 10 to 20 sets, or somewhere around there. To grow, MRV tends to be around 20 sets per muscle group per week, but you might not be that mean. You might be at an extreme. You might grow optimally from 10 sets. You might grow optimally from 25 sets. So why don't you try one of the extremes and see how that works? And again, keep progress pictures. Well, I guess it's kind of hard to actually measure your delts, your side delts. Track your progress and see if one of the extremes works for you. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I have really many thoughts on that one, because first and foremost, the side delts, how do you want to actually measure it, that they are actually growing or not? Because right now the thought process says that he's doing volume for the side delts, but they are simply not growing. So how long was the time span which you measured that progress? Because of course, I mean, a visual progress from the side lateral, from the side delts, so hard to actually grasp and to actually gauge. Could take years before you really see a progress going on. Furthermore, what is your body fat percentage? Because on the side delts, it could potentially be that just fat is covering your progress, and thus you're simply not getting how much they are actually growing. And most of the time when people talk about muscle group weaknesses, I always say, okay, have you ever been super lean so that you actually can tell that this is a true weakness or not? Because every once in a while, it could simply be that your body fat distribution is so unfavorable for you that it seems like you have a weak body part, but actually it could potentially be your strong body part, right? Other than that, another question would be what type of exercises you're doing. If you're only doing side lateral raises, yes, they're a great exercise, but I think only limiting yourself to that specific exercise will probably not yield you the greatest gains for that muscle group. But yeah, I could continue, but I leave something for Steve here if he wants to chime in.
Yeah, I just say there's just such a lack of context within that question as well. It's like, well, we have to assume that your nutrition is on point in terms of kind of actually eating for muscle growth. It's very difficult to know that. And then I would add, I do like, and you guys made some great points, I do like Greg McCall's kind of sketch of kind of, are you progressing? Yes or no? Kind of yes, then continue. We're assuming not progressing. So then are you well recovered or are you under recovered? And if you're under recovered, then it's probably you need to scale it back, like Miguel said. If you're feeling like you're barely doing anything, then why not try some more? It's kind of a simple way of that kind of, I know he's got a diagram somewhere where he put that out. Go on, Scout.
Yeah, just to play a little bit devil's advocate, because I like doing so. I think when it comes to the side delts, I have the feeling that when you want to track progress in that muscle body part area, then you really have to trust the process. With some certain body parts, you can actually see a visual change quite quickly, or you have certain exercises such as the squat, what Miguel was talking about, that these big compound lifts you can take as an indicator whether you're progressing on that end as well. But when it comes to the side delts, tape measuring gets already a little bit hard. Visual assessment, hard as well. Tracking progress in the gym could be a little bit complicated as well when you're only doing like these smaller muscle groups, those smaller exercises where you can't really progress from week to week, not even from mesocycle to mesocycle. I mean, I'm at the same weight with my side lateral raises since like forever, right? And when it comes to the overhead pressing, I'm not doing overhead press right now, but even there, it was hard to actually see some kind of progress with load on the bar, right? And thus, I think that when it comes to the side lateral, what is wrong with the side delts? It's really hard to actually see or detect a way of measuring the progress. And I think that when it comes to certain muscle groups and body parts, you simply have to trust the process a little bit, because you are doing something, right? What might be the optimal approach for you? You can go back to Miguel's thing, try a little bit around, see if there's any kind of change in the form of your progression in the gym or even a visual appearance. But other than that, I think that this is especially one part where you simply have to trust the process and put in the work over months and years without being able to see any kind of progression on paper or something.
Right. And I really like the fact that you mentioned body fat, because that's something that I think pertains a lot to the side delt specifically, because I know that if I were to lose 15 pounds of fat right now, my side delts will look bigger than they look right now, because that is one of the muscle groups that just pops out like crazy when you're lean. It will probably measurably be smaller, but just because you're so lean and it looks so much rounder that it looks bigger.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute again. I was like slow to catch up. No, I agree completely. Side delts as well. It's not one, like there's some muscle groups where you can consistently kind of, you've trained it. Like, when you've done squats, when you've worked your quads hard, you kind of know whether you've done like nothing or something. If you're getting some sort of response there. But something like side delts, don't know about you guys, I've never once, I don't think ever got sore in my side delts in my life. They felt tired at times, but not like obviously. So I think side delts like calves, these sort of smaller muscle groups, you just have, I think agreed, trust the process. And I think body fat is a big one for those. So no, I think that was really well covered. I don't know if Pascal wants to get to the next question. We've had
Yeah,
some nice comments.
holy shit, there are many comments now. Just let me
Awesome
quickly
comments.
check. No question, no question,
Oh, holy shit, that's cool.
no question.
We have 28 viewers, so that's very nice.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Steve. Only Steve. Watching Mike Israel, I think he's 5'6" for 250 pounds. My question is, how much weight can you put on? How much can you push your weight up without become too much fat? I think this is a question like, in general, if we want to put it like this, how much could you gain without being too fat? It's a really broad question. I don't know if we want to touch on that one or if we want to jump to the next, because I think that's really a question we could always answer with. It really depends on the individual and stuff. I mean, take someone like Big Ramy. If he wasn't on gear, he would still be like 240 pounds or something. Right? I mean,
right. Yeah. I think it's one of those questions that a lot of research that has been done on this, that people you like want to cite on like what percentage of body fat like decreases protein synthesis and is actually detrimental to your muscle growth. A lot of that is done on untrained individuals. We really don't know how someone who does resistance training, how they respond to having a higher body fat percentage, and if having. Obviously, I think that there is an extreme at which it might blunt muscle growth, but we don't really know if someone who exercises regularly, trains with weights, does progressive overload, is their nutrition, they're getting regular protein feedings. We don't know if having a higher body fat percentage will actually interfere with that individual's ability to put on muscle mass. And at that point, I think that one of the things that really this question comes down to is which body fat are you happy with? Because I know people who they like the physique of having a higher body fat percentage and just overall looking like a tank, looking super built, that kind of bear mode that Alpha Destiny likes to preach. And other people, they prefer to look smaller but be leaner, and that's totally fine. It's just personal preference.
No, totally. And I think I'm super glad that you brought up those kind of things, because it is a personal preference. And when we really take a look at the guys with the highest amount of lean body mass tissue, these are sumo wrestlers. And they are, I mean, when you take a look at them, you would say that they are obese or anything like that, because they're carrying so much fat as well. But along with that is also the highest amount of lean body mass tissue that has been recorded. And when you take a look at strongmen as well, I mean, there's something to it. They aren't leaning down just then to effectively gain more muscle mass for the next competition or something like that, right? They are sports specifically training. And along with that, when you're resistance training, it's just a byproduct that you are gaining muscle mass along the way, right? And yeah, so I think that it really comes down to the personal preferences kind of thing. Where do you feel happy? Where could you also perform the best when this is your main goal? And yeah, other than that, I think the next question, though, is quite interesting for you, Miguel. That is from Sweenung Bucken. How would you periodize and manage training variables in order to increase myonuclei for long-term gains?
I don't know if we can program specifically to increase my nuclei in the long term. That just comes with muscle growth. I mean, to gain muscle, you have to activate satellite cells and cause them to increase the amount of myonuclear domains, anyways. So I don't know how you'd periodize to not cause that, if that makes any sense.
No, I just wanted you to actually make that clear, that with resistance training comes just an increase in myonuclei. And yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. Steve, do you want to take the next one, or?
Yes. So we have Rod Hollier, and he has asked, we recently had a podcast on deloads. However, it wasn't discussed what the benefit is of doing a lower load slash volume versus taking time off the gym altogether. I'd be surprised if that wasn't covered, because I feel like that would have been covered anyway. It might not have been.
I think that Manu actually touched on it, where he said and talked about autoregulative deloads, and that he has every once in a while clients who take a full week off, but he doesn't really recommend it too often. I don't know if you want to get into that specifically.
But yeah, I mean, we can still cover it. So he's basically asking what's better, going to the gym during your deload or just not going.
I
shoot ahead. It's your turn. It's your show today.
Sure. So if you just stop going to the gym altogether, then we see a very fast decrease in fitness. And what happens when you stop going to the gym overall is it can take you longer to bounce back to that period where you're making optimal gains. Rather, if you're taking a deload and you're going to the gym and you're practicing the movements, going through the patterns, still going through all the biomechanics of it, then when it's time to get in the gym and kick ass again, you're right back to it, rather than having to take a few days to adjust to the process. Even psychologically, taking a week off from the gym, when I've had to do it, you get back, and breaking that routine, it's hard to get back. So if you take that week off, first of all, you're going to get that loss of fitness, some loss of those neuromuscular adaptations, and also you're just going to psychologically break that pattern that, I mean, most of us that go to the gym, we're kind of like type A OCD guys anyways, that we hate breaking that routine, and it's hard to get back to. Do you guys have anything to add?
No, absolutely. And I think that I always call them forced deloads because life happens, right? Yeah. Because of an injury, because of life occurrences. I don't know, something happened at work. There's a tragedy in your family, or you're on holiday where you don't have access to the gym. And these are the moments where it's perfect timing to then take a full week off from the gym and let your joints and tendons recover as well. But other than that, it's just like you said, that there's a technical efficiency compartment to it as well when you're training. And when you're training, not training for an entire week, it just feels a little bit weird coming back to the gym, not so specifically in regards to the weights, but just from a technical efficiency perspective. When you lie on the bench and then start to ramp up to your old weights, which you did in the previous mesocycle, because you want to get better from, or at least you should strive to get better from mesocycle to mesocycle. I know, depending on training age, that is not always possible. But when you're lying there and you haven't done any kind of pushing movements or any kind of weight resistance training, and it feels a little bit off and weird. So there's definitely some kind of a detraining effect, not specifically in regards to your strength adaptations, not specifically in regards to hypertrophy, because it takes much longer time that we actually see a decrease in hypertrophy or in strength, but more so just from a psychological perspective and from a technical efficiency, so from a neurological perspective. And thus, I always recommend people still going to the gym, because deload isn't taking time off the gym. It's still training, and it's still challenging to some extent. And that is something I think that many people miss out on, that they think that a deload is just winging it, which is not. You're still going in, and you should still be focused while you're going through the movements, and you should still put some intent and purpose into each and every single rep. Only because it's only an RPE of, I don't know, 6 or 5 or something, doesn't mean that it's overly light and that you can't get injured, or that it doesn't cause any kind of stimulus or anything like that. So yeah, that's just my take on that one.
Yeah, I'd agree with you both, and I'd just say there's some things in loads of areas of life where the best thing to do doesn't fit with your best psychology. So I think there's people that love to go to the gym and train balls out, and when they can't do that, they'd prefer to just stay at home than go to the gym. Now, that might not be the best for their overall progress and results, but that might be the best for their psychology, or that might only be the thing that fits their psychology. But when we want to be the best athletes we can be, you have to do things that are maybe outside what you want to be doing. And I completely agree. The only thing I think we maybe not touched on is you actually end up recovering a bit faster when you actually do some movement and you get some blood flowing and you get some kind of aiding some nutritional partitioning, I guess, getting some blood around the muscles. So no, I completely agree with you guys.
Right. And the only thing that I would like to add is, if life demands it, don't be afraid to take that week off the gym. Don't be like, oh, well, I'm going to be awkward going back to the gym. When life demands, that takes priority.
Man, I would even go as far as saying that when life demands it and you need to take off gym for the next 2 months, then do it. Yeah. I mean, there's no question about it. We are doing it for the long term. And I mean, when we just talk about that recent study about epigenetics showing how much muscle mass sticks around, or at least the mechanisms behind it, I mean, I think that study showed 7 weeks and then it cut it off there. But the theory behind it is that it actually could stick around for a couple of months, even up to a couple of years, right? So don't be afraid to take time for other things in life, right? If that is required. So let's move on to the next question. We actually have two that are quite similar and that touches on the same topic, and that is, when should a maintenance phase be used when dealing with a bulk or cutting cycle?
With a what or cutting cycle? Sorry.
A bulk, so a gaining phase, or a cutting cycle.
Cool. So I think in a bulk, maintenance phases they don't need to be taken quite often. I would take one when you have been pushing like a high volume phase for a long period of time. Maybe let's say you push 3 to 4 mesocycles of a very high volume approach, then a maintenance phase might be useful to resensitize the body to those higher volume approaches, or to just kind of give yourself like a longer term fatigue management or fatigue reducing mesocycle. And then in terms of a cut, I would say to push a maintenance phase when you're going for a short-term mini cut. I think that's a good time to go for a maintenance phase, or just around MEV. And also when you're in that end stage contest prep where you're realistically not going to be making many gains, then I think it's a good idea to try to hit your maintenance volume. What do you guys think?
Steve, go ahead.
So I mean, I tend to put in maintenance periods are basically when you need to reduce fatigue from training for the most part. So when you're dieting for long periods of time, you can then put in the maintenance phase to let things settle down. When you've been kind of pushing your gaining phase for a long period of time and your volumes are getting to a very high point, then you can hold there and kind of hold a new kind of body weight as well. I think that's quite a nice thing to be doing, especially if it's a new weight that you've never pushed to before. And that can kind of help harden things, I think was like the old school bodybuilding term. I think that's a nice idea. But for the most part, is that fatigue reduction. For a bodybuilder, there's no specific reason to use them very, very frequently. They're just used as and when kind of required to allow for more progression to come in future.
Wait, sorry, do they mean maintenance volume or maintenance like intake calories?
One question was about maintenance intake, and I think that the other one was so as well, because it was referring to a bulk and a cutting cycle. But I think that it still holds true to in many ways that what you just mentioned about if you're going through 2 or 3 mesocycles, taking a diet break when you're in a cutting phase might be appropriate in that instance as well. And the other way around when you're gaining as well. I mean, you are in a momentum, but when things stall a little bit, pull down or pull back the volume just slightly, the maintenance phase. And the same thing then applies to the nutritional intake. Just pull it down slightly so that you are setting yourself up for future gains once again. I mean, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to add to the nutritional component of it, that I think that there is something to when you have bulked to a new weight, or you have massed your weight to a new weight, to sort of, like Steve said, go through a maintenance phase and try to hang on to that muscle mass before you begin cutting. It's my experience as a coach, and I think there might be some literature to show that when you gain muscle mass, you kind of need a little bit of time for your body to sort of actualize it, if that makes sense, actualize that muscle mass to realize that, hey, we need to hang on to this, rather than, okay, well, we gained this to go through this quick period of stress. Now the stress is over, and the person is now going through deficit. Okay, let's lose that. We don't need that tissue. So if you have gained to a new weight, you're and you know a lot of it is muscle mass, try to go through a maintenance things. I know that it's hard, because a lot of the times when you decide you want to cut at the end of a bulk, you're just kind of like, you're tired of food, you're tired of looking quote unquote fluffy, and you want to go through that cutting phase right away. But try to hold it for a little bit, go through a maintenance phase, and then diet down.
No, I completely agree. I think that's a good idea. And for me, the maintenance phase is working with kind of maintenance volumes at the same time. Often I'm like, why would you push like hypertrophy volumes when you are seeking to maintain, kind of keep the goal there? I think that makes good sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Cool.
Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, we have. So yeah, there was quite a few maintenance questions. Okay, so
yeah, totally.
Zach has asked, what do you suggest for someone who is more on the skinny fat side? Shorter masses, more aggressive, shorter mini cuts. Yeah, basically the first thing I said. What do you suggest for someone more on the skinny fat side? What would you do in that situation, Miguel?
So when someone is skinny fat, I typically like to cut down first. For a few reasons. One is because that person psychologically, they tend to want to be leaner first. That's what I typically find. And also, if someone is skinny fat, most of the times they are someone who hasn't had a lot of resistance training under their belt. So you can put them through a good deficit, get them losing body fat, and then through an optimized approach that we take, you can get them to gain quite a bit of muscle mass. Oftentimes, skinny fat individuals are the people who have just started lifting, or who have not taken an optimal, quote unquote, approach to training. So when you put them in a deficit and you really take their training up a notch and make them do something that is more on the side of optimal, you can get them to lose body fat while gaining lean mass simultaneously.
Yeah, that was great. So I was just waiting for Steve to chime in, but then I'd just take over.
I was muted again. I keep clicking, so I'm like, no, I think I would completely agree. I think generally most people, it very much comes down to a question of, would you be comfortable kind of with, if you're not comfortable with the level of body fat you are, then you would want to cut down initially. And as you rightly said, if you haven't, you probably haven't been getting your training kind of principle based, you probably haven't had much kind of luck with your nutrition to point. So as you start getting that all in check, you're going to be growing muscle and losing fat for that period of time. And then you can focus more so on kind of then building up once you've already done that.
Right. And unless someone is skinny fat and they show me a picture of, again, someone who has that higher body fat, that sort of like bare-bone tanky look, and they're like, I want to look like that. Fine, sure. Then we'll take maybe like a maintenance. We'll have you eating at maintenance, maybe a slight surplus, and we'll get you looking like that. But most of the times, people say they want to look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
Totally. No, I have a couple of things to add. In a more broader sense in regards to mini cuts. So when I think making use of mini cuts is more so reserved for an experienced dieter and experienced lifter. At least that's my opinion. Someone who is 160 at 6 foot and still deems himself as skinny fat tells me that he's not an experienced trainee or not an experienced dieter. So I think when it comes to these kind of things, then the better approach would be something like Miguel already pointed out, cutting down first of learning how to actually cut, right? And then take an extended amount of time to actually build some quality amount of muscle mass. Because weighing, and sorry, Zach, that I'm using your numbers, but this is a really great example. Being 6 foot, weighing 160 pounds, and being like 14 to 17% body fat, and I would even say that it's probably a little bit higher because skinny fat people aren't 14 to 17% body fat. That just tells me that you have a long way to go in regards to building muscle mass. And I see it all the time that people, it became a trend now that throwing around with mini cuts to justify always being in a caloric deficit. And now it actually gets to the point where a mini cut is being used like 5 times in a year. But oh no, I'm just doing it for my gaining, right? Because I'm now taking a phase to resynthesize my body for the upcoming gaining phase. And then after 5 weeks, they are again doing a mini cut, right? But they never actually build that solid amount of muscle mass to actually justify it like really. I think that is just the problem with many people now, that they are using abusing more so the mini cuts to actually justify their behavior, whereas it's not the optimal approach to go for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it's interesting to see how different things keep coming back to the fitness industry with different names. And I find that the what's going on with mini cuts, it's almost just like crash dieting, gaining the weight back, crash dieting. It's almost, you see people almost using it as an excuse to yo-yo diet.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that they are then justifying it also with certain studies where they said, or articles even, of people like, for example, Danny Lennon from Sigma Nutrition, who did a fantastic summary on why it might be a good idea to diet aggressively and do a shorter amount of dieting. But they are using or cherry picking these kind of things also with the studies where they had the athletes 40% of a deficit while they are still, and athletes while they are still gaining some lean body mass tissue, right? And they are abusing these kind of things only to then justify their behavior. And it's like you said, that it's just more crash dieting, regaining the weight, and now they have the proof of it being okay, right? Where in total it isn't really, or it at least doesn't really serve their purpose, their overall purpose of becoming a great potentially bodybuilder or having a great physique.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think mini cuts are being used so inappropriately at the moment. It's kind of become a way for people to excuse messy bulking, or the old Folk approach, and then it is becoming a bit of a yo-yo, and that isn't what it's actually like. A mini cut done right is like a reward before a good gaining phase, because you've kept things in check. So all you need is a small sweep up of 3 to 4 weeks where you can actually bring your body fat down by like 2 to 4% and put yourself in a better position to keep gaining. Whereas most people end up kind of adding pounds and pounds of body fat, and then it's almost like a 50-50 ratio of massing to mini cutting. And that's just not a recipe for success in by any means. Awesome. Should we get to the next question?
Yeah, we are coming up on time, isn't it? Like an hour?
Oh yeah, we have just a bit about. Should we get to one more?
Yeah, one more question, and I think that it is the most important question from Cyber Monkey 63.
Cyber Monkey.
And that is a really, really important one, and that is, what are your favorite cereals, Miguel?
Oh,
Steve is just like, oh.
Are you like, first of all, is this person trying to start a war between all three of us?
We've had this discussion.
Yeah, totally. Steve knows mine.
Okay, wait. Lucky Charms, the Apple Cinnamon Cheerios, and the s'more cereal, like the new one with like the little marshmallows. Yeah. Oh, now I'm hungry.
I've never tasted any of the ones you listed, and I would really, really like to.
They're unreal. What are your guys's?
Yeah, Steve, do you want to go ahead? Because mine, after I counted up mine, we really need to shut that live stream down.
So I don't think I've tried all the American ones now. They've got some new ones that I haven't tried, but my general ones, and they are basically all American. Reese's Puffs, I think, are number one. I just love Reese's Puffs. They're very good. Chocolate Lucky Charms, or like the chocolate Mateys.
Yeah.
They're good. And then, I don't know. I do like Crunchy Nut Cornflakes for me. Honey Nut Crunchy Nut Cornflakes, like a standard. They're pretty solid. But then I could go cinnamon, what they call cinnamon grahams. They're pretty good as well. Which I think they're called something different in the US. Cinnamon
they're called
something.
Yeah.
Whereas Pascal's now going to say all of the most bland varieties there are.
He's gonna say the cereals that make you poop.
The thing is, when you, so I've only been to the US once. That was in New York City, and when you go into a grocery market, not only a shop but a really supermarket kind of style, and you go down an aisle where it was only like milk products, you already have such a large amount at your disposal to pick from. And I think it's the same when it comes to cereals then. But here in Germany, we basically only have the typical ones from Kellogg's. And that is like Choco Krispies. I can't even count them because it's just like 10 different flavors or something like that. Right. And it's just super boring. So yeah, my knowledge on that front isn't as amazing. So I would say, yeah, Choco Krispies.
Which are Cocoa Pops.
Yeah, Cocoa Pops. Yeah, totally. Then the 100% whole grain Cheerios, which I had when I was over in New York, and then the other ones. From I don't know if you ever had these, because I just recently watched a video from Stephanie Butterbur when they were over in Germany for the what's it called again? The FIBO, exactly. They had the cereals from Lion
Bar cereal. Yeah,
exactly. And I just had a pack of these, and they are actually quite good. Like chocolate caramel, which is actually quite amazing. Yeah, Cyber Monkeys. Sorry, I know I need to up my game. I think I need to do a trip to the US, and then only do a cereal trip.
I'd be down for that.
Totally.
Just warm up.
Training cereals, driving around in the car like a muscle car. That's the American dream for me.
It is.
Cool. Steve?
Yeah, I don't think we've got anything else particularly. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this Q&A. Hopefully it's given you a chance to get to know Miguel a bit better, and kind of give you a bit of an idea about how knowledgeable he really is, because he truly is. We're not just kind of bigging him up for no reason. He is an Alan Aragon approved for no reason. He is a very smart individual, but also he's got personality. He's a good coach, and we're very excited to have him on board. And he's only going to bring us up, and it's only going to provide you guys better content, better coaching, as we learn from each other and develop. So we want to thank you all, because this couldn't have come true without all of your guys' support. So yeah, thank you guys very much, and thank you to Miguel and Pascal.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you to Steve and Pascal for giving me this opportunity. It's truly amazing. And thanks to all of you, the Revive Stronger family, who have sent me messages, added me on Facebook, followed me on Instagram. I think I woke up and I had like 300 new followers. So thank you so much for all of you who have come over to show me support. I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart.
No, hey, it's the last word now up to me. That's too much for me to handle. I just read another thing from Chi-Chi. Set up the GoFundMe Pascal's American Dream. I think I will do that. crowdfunding my American dream of driving through America in a muscle car and eating cereals all day and training all day. I'm not entirely certain whether people would actually fund that or not.
I actually think me and you need to get into the US and we can go meet Miguel. We've actually got more of a reason to now, and I'd love to do that.
We'll
off to Texas. Off to Texas. Okay, I can't do any kind of Texan accent.
And Lyle's from Austin, isn't he? And
Lyle
and Eric Salazar as well. He got a gym facility there.
Yeah. More reasons.
Yeah. Cool. So guys, let's wrap this up. And once again, thank you very much for joining in. And I'm sure you will hear from us over the next days, weeks, and stuff.
Bye.
Bye.